And she convinced Larry to wan me out. Everywhere that switch hit me, it was weapons.
Weps, yeah.
Listen, I have a clue. And when she got through whipping, she said, sit your butt down and don't move. So about 10 or 12 minutes later, it took that long to get over there. Yeah, that thing. So she comes back on the porch and she sits down. She says, do you know why I whooped you? I said, no, ma'am. She said, you hear me and you hear me clearly. Don't you ever think so little of yourself that you let folk treat you any kind of way just so you can stick around.
This is a journey.
Let me take you on a journey.
There will still be
the journey. The journey.
New sheriff in town, and his name is
The journey.
Journey.
This thing is bigger than Nino Brown. This is
The journey. The journey.
What is it that moved you?
The journey. The journey. The journey. The journey.
The Journey Initiative is being generously supported by TVA, the Tennessee Valley Authority.
Welcome back to another episode of The Journey. I'm your host, Larry Robinson, and today we have another Memphis icon that I'm sure you're going to love. But before we get to him, we're going to start with our quote. And the quote today comes from the great Marcus Garvey. And it goes a little something like this. If you have no confidence in self, you are twice defeated in the race of life. What does that mean? It means that not only you have the haters that you're going to fight against, but now you got to fight against yourself too. So if nothing else, believe in you, because you can take you as far as you want to go. But listen, let's get back to our Memphis icon. This brother's out of Proctor, Arkansas. He's a country boy, man. He's just a straight country boy that made it all the way to Memphis. He's committed to Memphis, though. Preached at the age of 21. Called to preaching at 21. Man, you know what I was doing at 21? Listen, great friend, father, husband, pastor, and a member of the greatest fraternity in the world, Kappa Alpha Psi. I'm speaking of none other than my brother, Reverend Dr. Chris Davis. What's up, Doctor?
What's up, man?
How you doing, man?
It's all good, man. It's all
man. Good.
Listen, thanks for the invite, man.
Oh, man, we got to have you. We got to have you, man. You're one of these icons here that's doing some amazing things in Whitehaven for sure. Man, you took a church from basically a few parishioners to now busting at the seams. So we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that in the second segment. But first, tell me about Proctor, man. Tell me about the early years.
Man, listen, Highway 147 South, man,
Okay.
New Hart, Arkansas. Listen, exit number 271 off I-40.
Okay.
Listen, was raised by my maternal great-grandmother.
Your maternal great-grandmother?
My maternal great-grandmother, Caledonia Easter Loney Bell Hampton Lewis Yancey.
Okay, she sounds like a Muslim. Hold on, man. She got about 12 names.
Tell you how it goes. When she was born, Cab Calloway had a song called Caledonia, Why Your Big Head So Hard.
Okay.
She was born on Easter Sunday.
Okay.
She was delivered by a midwife named Loney Bell.
Okay.
Her maiden name was Hampton.
Okay.
She married Eugene Lewis. He preceded her in death. She married George Yancey, which made her given name Caledonia Easter Loney Bell Hampton Lewis Yancey. I just called her Big Mama.
Oh, I love it, man. I love it. So it was just you and Big Mama in the house?
For a while. It was me and Big Mama up until I turned around maybe 12.
Okay.
When I turned 12, Big Mama's health started to fail.
Okay.
So she and I both moved in with my grandparents, James and Ellie Chambers, her daughter.
Okay.
And so I went from my great-grandmother's house to my grandmother's house. And then when I left there, I went to my own house.
Okay, all right. Well, see, now I got to find out about moms. So where was mom in this whole process?
Listen, kind of doing her own thing. In fact, mom got pregnant when she was 14.
Okay.
Had me at 15.
So mom was a kid.
So what you had was a baby trying to raise a baby.
Okay.
And of course, I had the good fortune of sort of falling into the loving care of grandparents. And then, of course, had me at 15, then at 18, was married, had my middle brother, and the rest is history. And even when she arrived at her version of stable, I had no interest in leaving my grandparents' house.
Really?
But now remember, I grew up in the country. So now let me tell you what that meant.
Okay.
That meant Big Mama's house was here.
Okay.
Directly behind Big Mama's house was my mama's trailer.
Okay.
Right there over here was my Uncle Willie.
Okay, hold on. We're gonna get to that. Let's get through this first part. So outside of Big Mama and your grandparents, who outside of that nucleus had the biggest impact on young Chris?
Ooh. Outside of Big Mama and my grandparents? I don't think anybody surpasses sort of their influence.
No, not impact, not
so,
passes, but just kind of gave you some wind underneath those wings in a sense.
The teachers at Wetlock Elementary School.
Okay.
Man, listen, I went to, it was kindergarten through 6th grade. Mm-hmm. The building was on one level.
Okay.
It's set in the middle of a field in Edmondson, Arkansas. Mm-hmm. But man, listen, I think of folks like Fannie Campbell, Doris Oliver, QZ Smith. Them folks had me convinced that the only reason I couldn't walk on water is because I hadn't tried.
Yeah, man, that's what it's about. That's what it's about, giving these young people the belief in themselves to be successful.
Listen, I'm telling you now, I tell folk all the time, no fancy playground, no state-of-the-art library and all that kind of good stuff.
But you had what you needed.
All the love, support, and affirmation that a kid needed, I got it. As a matter of fact, they bused us from there to West Memphis, which is where I went to junior high and high school. And so I was coming out of an environment where I could count the number of white kids in my elementary school on one hand. Okay. Well, they were busing me to West Memphis West. Now, if you know anything about West Memphis.
Hold on. You getting all into the story.
Right.
Well, I know. But so give me a decision you made as a young person that ended up having a lifelong impact, even though you didn't know it at the time. You didn't realize it was going to have the impact that it had.
When I made the decision to join the United States Army.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, because the truth of the matter is, I had no real interest in going to the Army. The Army was the furthest thing from my mind.
Right.
Again, grew up in Proctor, Arkansas. So,
did you not have any other options? Was that
from the age of 12 up to the age of 17? I knew what I was going to do every summer. I was not begging grocery at the local grocery store. I wasn't selling tennis shoes at the mall. I was chopping cotton.
Wait a minute. We're going to come back to that for sure.
Okay.
You was picking cotton? Chopping.
Never picked, but I chopped my share.
Okay. All right then. When did you know you was going to be okay? At what point did you say, I can do this?
Probably when I left home and went to upstate New York as a college freshman.
Okay.
I had never flown on a plane before. The only place I had gone outside of Proctor, Memphis, this general area, was Flint, Michigan. You know, New York was just a place on the map.
Right.
And the first time I went to New York and sort of navigated that terrain, I figured I can figure it out.
Wow. How different are you from the person you dreamed you'd be as a kid?
Well, I figured I'd be okay.
Okay.
But the life I live, I couldn't have possibly envisioned it as a kid.
Right.
Because nobody around me lived the life that I live now.
Wow. What's your why? Why you get up every day and fight the good fight?
It probably sounds cliche, but really trying to give my children opportunities that I didn't have.
Right.
But I think beyond that is to be able to convince somebody else that you can come from the worst of circumstances and do it if you just make some critical decisions along the way.
Well, I know for a fact that you're an individual that has had some challenges along the way.
Be clear.
So let me ask you this. When was that first moment you realized you was a black man? Wait a minute, don't give it away right now. Listen, we're going to be right back on the journey where brother, Reverend Pastor, Reverend Dr. Chris Davis is going to tell you when he realized he was a brother. Stay right there. We're going to come right back. This is The Journey.
Check out all your KUDZUKIAN favorites now.
Welcome back to The Journey. I'm your host, Larry Robinson, and today Memphis's icon is the Reverend Dr. Chris Davis. Now, I know we're going to get to the point where Reverend Doctor realized that he was a brother, but I had a couple other questions. I want to hit you with a couple phrases and words and just get your feedback.
Okay.
Number one, what does evenly yoked mean to you?
Evenly yoked. Same focus, hopes, dreams, aspirations, commitment to sacrifice and grind.
Okay. What does that mean in a marriage to you, to be evenly yoked?
For me, being evenly yoked means I've got to be in a relationship with somebody who's got that same sense of hustle, that same sense of grind that I've got. We don't have to see it the same way. We don't even have to always agree that this is the best way to get there,
Right.
but we have to agree that this is where we're trying to get to.
Okay. Legacy.
How I'll be remembered when I am no more.
Awesome. Awesome. Great transition. How do you remember the first time you were made to know that you were a black man?
We were, when I say we, meaning me and my grandfather,
Okay.
we were on Horseshoe Lake, which is outside of Proctor. Fellow by the name of George Zanone. Now, if you're a native Memphian, that name means something to you. Because, of course, George Zanone owned Pepsi Cola and all of that kind of good stuff.
Okay.
But he built the condominiums on Horseshoe Lake, Arkansas, which was supposed to be a getaway for the folks in Memphis who had means.
Right.
And I remember him having a conversation with my grandfather. Now, keep in mind that my grandfather had a son that was George Zanone's age. And he kept calling him, my grandfather kept calling him Mr. George. And he kept calling my grandfather James. And when we got back in the pickup, I said, Granddaddy, why you let him call you James and you call him Mr. George? My grandfather's immediate response was, boy, shut your mouth. Stay out of that. You ain't got nothing to do with that.
Wow.
So I knew immediately I had crossed some type of line that I didn't understand.
Right.
Right.
Right. Whoa. Whoa. Tell me about your childhood, man. What was it like in Proctor, man?
Well, here's the thing. I think now when I look back on it in retrospect,
Right.
it was a different kind of existence, of course. And as a child, that which was abnormal seemed normal to me.
Right.
If that's just the environment you grew up in, I can't, we were not wealthy by any means.
Right.
But my grandfather was always a hard worker, a hustler.
Right.
So we never went without anything. Now,
How much is that a part of your character? What you saw saw from your grandfather?
That's an essential part of who I am.
Really?
That's an essential part of who I am. That grind. I don't remember my grandfather not working until he became an amputee. He was a diabetic who wouldn't take care of himself,
Right.
and eventually they had to amputate. But before then,
He was on the grind.
I never remember a day him not working. See, my story, our lights were never turned off.
Okay.
We were never homeless. We were never without food. Now, I didn't have Jordans on,
Right.
but I wasn't barefoot.
Right.
So,
All right. What's some of your fondest memories of Proctor? What's one of them things where you put your smile, just a smile, just where you see all your bicuspids and everything?
listen, as strange
Your
as
molars and everything.
as strange as this sounds, as a kid growing up, my favorite time of the year was not Christmas, Thanksgiving, 4th of July. No. My favorite time of the year was the fall.
Why?
In the fall of the year, we killed hogs.
So you a killer?
Listen, man, a hog killing, Larry, was a community event. And now that I look back on it in retrospect as an adult, I have an even greater appreciation.
Okay.
Because now here's the thing. You had Eddie Grisby,
Okay.
Percy Carter, Doodad Jones, and a handful of other folks that raised hogs.
Okay.
When they would get ready to kill hogs, now keep in mind, only 4 or 5 folks owned hogs.
Right.
But when they started killing hogs, everybody in the community got meat. Everybody got bacon. Everybody got some pork chops. Everybody got chitlins. Everybody got pig feet. It didn't matter that you didn't own a hog.
Wow. And what about that memory resonates with you?
Well, first of all, as a kid, man, I just love waiting on the cracklings to come out of the hot grease.
Skins, baby.
Skins to come out. But beyond that, I think the most valuable lesson it taught me is that there really is enough to go around.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? If you're willing to share, everybody may not have a preponderance, but there's enough for everybody to have enough.
Okay. Ask you about fond memories. Tell me about some non-fond memories. When was the last time, that switch, you had to go out there and grab that switch off the tree or something like that?
I remember it clearly. I remember the last whooping my grandmother gave me.
Really? Mm-hmm. Well, what'd you do, man?
I was 11 years old.
Okay.
I asked my grandmother, could I go over to Crittenden and Evelina Thornton's house to play with my friend Dee Dee?
Okay.
She said to me, go, but don't give Crittenden and Evelina no trouble. I said, no, ma'am. So we were all in the yard playing football.
Okay.
We did what boys do. Me and Dee Dee got into it.
Okay.
Dee Dee told all of the other little boys to come up on the porch. He hooked the screen. He said, you can't come on my grandparents' porch. So I sat on the steps and I had my face against the screen. My grandmother drove by. She said, Chris. I said, yes, ma'am. Come to the car. She said, why you sitting on the steps? Why you not on the porch? I said, Dee Dee said I couldn't go on the porch. She said, okay. She said, get in the car and help me unload these groceries and you can go right back. I said, okay. So I said to myself, y'all got to go help my grandmama. I'll be right back. I went home, unloaded the grocery. I said, grandmama, can I go back over to Dee Dee? She said, just a minute. She said, come out here on the back porch. I said, yes, ma'am. When I got to the back porch, she grabbed my wrist. I didn't know she had gotten switches. It's the summer. And she convinced Larry to wan me out. Everywhere that switch hit me, it was weapons.
Weps, yeah.
Listen, I didn't have a clue. And when she got through whipping, she said, sit your butt down and don't move. So about 10 or 12 minutes later, it took that long to get over there. Yeah, that thing. So she comes back on the porch and she sits down. She says, do you know why I whooped you? I said, no, ma'am. She said, you hear me and you hear me clearly. Don't you ever think so little of yourself that you let folk treat you any kind of way just so you can stick around. Ooh. Do you understand that? I said, yes, ma'am. That's been almost 40 years ago. And to this day, I still live my life based on that. I tell folk all the time, listen, this goes for my church, my marriage, or any other relationship I'm in. You ain't got to dog me. You ain't got to mistreat me. You ain't even got to argue with me. Act like you don't want me around.
Just act like it.
Just act like it. And you'll look up.
And I'm gone.
I'm gone. Wow.
Whoa. All right, let's go back to the teen years. What do you remember at transition into high school? What was that high school Chris Davis like?
That was a different kind of experience for me.
Why?
I'll just be honest with you. Of course, I grew up in a little small rural community, all black.
Right.
I mean, the only thing white in my community was notebook paper.
Okay.
When they bused me to junior high, it was decidedly different because, of course, they bused me to West Memphis West because that was the closest junior high to the country.
What was the racial makeup of West Memphis?
90-10.
Black, white, or?
90% white, 10% black.
Whoa, so you went to almost a total flip.
West Memphis Wonder was like 90% black.
Okay.
West Memphis East was 50-50. West Memphis West was like 90% white because that was the closest junior high to the country club.
Right.
Where the school district said, the kids that we busing in from the country, we have to bus them to the closest school.
Right.
The closest school
was
West Memphis West. So, you're talking about a whole sort of different socioeconomic standards.
Give me an idea of what was one of those moments that stick out with you or stick out to you.
I remember, and I laugh about it. My, of course, I got 5 kids. We may talk about that later.
Right.
Jenna is a sophomore at University of Alabama, Birmingham. Her senior year of high school.
Now, who's Jenna?
That's my daughter.
You joined, okay.
My senior year of high school, she's been taking Mandarin for several years. The teacher says the only way she's really going to be proficient in Chinese is she got to go to China.
Right.
Jenna comes home with the paperwork. It's $6,000 to send her to China. She doesn't hem, she doesn't ha. She lay it on the table. She says, I got to go to China. Just sort of matter of fact. Right. And she expects me to send her to China. Right. Which I did.
Okay.
I sat there and I looked at that paper, Larry, and tears began to run down my face. My wife said to me, she said, what's wrong with you? I say, in the 8th grade, I took Terry Tackett for French. I say, Miss Tackett was planning a trip to Paris so we could practice our French.
Right.
I said, it was $2,200 per student. She gave us all the paperwork and told us to take it home. All of the class, the white kids started talking about they were going to Paris. I said, when I got to the door, leaving the class, I balled mine up and threw it in the trash. I didn't even take it home because I knew it wasn't even an option.
Whoa. Talking about a surreal moment.
That's right. I knew it wasn't even an option. Wasn't no point in discussing it. Wasn't no point in setting myself for the disappointment. I never even bothered to mention it to my folks because I knew it wasn't going to happen.
Man.
And just to see how she casually came in and said, I need to go, with every expectation that I would send her.
And what year were you, what grade was it again?
8th.
You was in 8th grade. Now, let's go to your senior year. Senior year in high school. Tell me about you in that space and what was going on in young Chris's life.
I think if I look back in retrospect, I may have been a classic underachiever.
Okay.
In that I never really had to put forth a whole lot of effort. Right. Stuff just sort of came to me. And I think about it now that if I had just put forth some effort, hell, I could have been the first Barack Obama. Right. If I'd have just put forth some effort. But, but since I was that guy, laugh, talk, gregarious, I'm in the AP class, as the honor class, I got a pass, I was that dude. Right. And so I remember sitting in the guidance office. Still hadn't really decided where I was going to go to school. Right. I was sitting there with some white classmates of mine. Okay. One of them said he was going to Vanderbilt. Another one said he was going to Rhodes. I don't remember where the third one was going. And sort of a condescending kind of way. And I've known these folks since 7th grade. Right. Chris, where you going to school? And it had sort of a hint of,
we know you're not going.
We know you're not going. And so I said, and out of the corner of my eye, real talk, I see a magazine on the table. The magazine said West Point. I said, I'm going to West Point. They said, what? I knew I said something by the way they reacted. Right. So then, I got some bravado. Then you heard me going to West Point. What? Just like that. And they were like, oh, okay.
They call flies it.
Right. So they walk out the guidance office. As far as I'm concerned, that's the end of the conversation. Right. I reached for the door to leave. Jerry Williams, who was the only black guidance counselor we had, Chris Davis, come in my office, son. Walked in the office. What's up, Mr. Williams? He said, boy, you done told that lie. We got some work to do. I said, what lie? He said, didn't I hear you say you're going to West Point? I said, Mr. Williams, what is West Point? I didn't know what it was. Real talk. I didn't know what it was. He says, that's the United States Military Academy, West Point. He said, you know what's funny? I said, what's that? He said, you might just get in. Now watch this. Watch this now. I couldn't even focus on what life would look like if I went. See, one of the things I didn't mention is that my father didn't even acknowledge I was his until I was 16. Now, my father's a retired...
Oh, man, how you going to wait till we get this fine interview before you share that?
Listen, he's a retired colonel now. He did active duty the whole 9. In my mind, when he said that, I said, if I get into West Point, finally, he'll love me. He'll accept me. You know what I'm saying? He will own the fact beyond this $117.13 in child support that I get every month. I remember to the penny.
Wow.
I said, finally. So I said, what do I need to do?
So when did that change? When did your relationship with your dad, where did that change?
Who said it's changed?
Ooh. So you did all that.
Yeah, so what ends up
and
happening?
You didn't end up going to West Point.
I did.
Okay.
Tell you what happened. So we start the process. I apply.
Right.
I get a letter from the admissions committee. Thank you for your interest. Unfortunately, you're saying you don't have a congressional nomination. Write my congressman and all that good stuff.
Right.
They write me back and say, you've missed the deadline. We can only nominate 2 persons from the state, and we've already made those commitments.
Okay.
Cool. So I still trying to figure out where I'm going to go.
Right.
Where I'm going to go. So I'm still going through. All of a sudden, I get a scholarship, the Roosevelt Thompson, that comes with an internship for the governor of Arkansas, Bill Clinton.
Right.
So I've graduated from high school, don't know where I'm going to college, but I'm interning for Bill Clinton that summer.
Okay.
One day he takes me to lunch at McDonald's on Broadway in Little Rock. He says, Chris, where you going to school?
Bill Clinton.
Bill Clinton. I said, I guess the University of Arkansas. He said, why do you say it like that? I said, I don't want to go. He said, where do you want to go? I said, I want to go to West Point. He said, then go. I said, I have a congressional nomination. Couldn't get in. He said, well, Hillary and I spent some time in Fayetteville. You'll love it up there. He said, besides, we need some of our better students to stay in the state. In the conversation, we started talking about something else. 3 days later, special legislative session taking place in Little Rock.
Okay.
Pryor, Bumpers, Alexander, those are our congressmen. Right. They're in town. Bill and Hillary Clinton invite them to the governor's mansion for dinner. He casually mentions, I got a kid interning for me this summer from Eastern Arkansas. Anything you could do to help him, I'd appreciate it. 3 days after that, I get a call from my grandmother. Hey, baby, you got a letter here from West Point. I said, oh, that's just them calling me to tell me I didn't get in. She said, you want me to read it? I said, yes, ma'am. She got quiet. She said, I don't think that's what this letter said. I said, what the letter said?
What the letter
The letter essentially said was, we're not able to offer you admission into this year's class. However, if you're willing to go to the prep school for a year, we guarantee admissions next year. So I go to the prep school. They were concerned about my math scores.
Okay.
So they were going to give me a year to work on my math and guarantee admissions the next year. So now watch what I do. I take this letter.
Uh-huh.
I got my father's address from his parents.
Okay.
I sent him this letter that I've been admitted. Surely.
He's going to love me.
Listen, he going to love me now. I get a call from my mother. Did you send something to your daddy? I said, what are you talking about? Did you send him a letter about you going to West Point? Like, yeah, how did you know? I didn't tell you that.
Right.
Because he took your letter and called the Crittenden County Child Support Office to make sure that your May child support payment would be your last. I said, you lying. She said, they just called me from the child support office. She said, when I said, they said, we know your son is finishing up. She said, how y'all know he graduating?
Oh, wow.
The woman said he wouldn't be going to West Point if he wasn't graduating. And that's what he did with my letter.
Man. So, man, we got, listen, we're going to have to do a part 2 to Reverend Davis. But we're going to keep going for this sake. Just roll with us for a little bit longer. But check it out. I got to ask you, if you were talking to that kid back at Proctor, he's sitting there on Saturday morning eating a bowl of Frosted Flakes, watching the cartoon. Mm-hmm. Talk to him. And what would you say to him?
I would probably say to him, although I know it's hard for you to believe, there is a world out there much bigger than Proctor.
Okay.
And if you want to see it and flourish in it, you can. But the work starts now. Doing just enough to get by won't be sufficient. Because when you leave Proctor, you're going to discover it's a world full of folks that's just like you, that learn quick, that don't have to apply themselves, but that won't be good enough to get you to where you want to go.
Fantastic. Now, you talk to yourself, but now I want to talk to some of these young boys that may be sitting at their table, looking at you on Roku, Apple TV, or many of the different outlets. What would you say to them? And say it in that camera right there. Talk directly to them, Pastor.
Listen to me. I know you feel like you've probably been dealt a bad hand, and you probably have, but the hand doesn't get any worse than mine. Listen, my mother had me at 15. She was much more interested in dating and going on with her own life than raising me. Had a father who lied to my grandparents and said, if you don't put me on child support, let me go to school, I'll come back and do right by him. Right meant finally at the age of 16, he paid $113.17 a month for child support. But I could have easily used that as a crutch, as an excuse. But instead, I decided I wanted more. I was not going to spend my life in Proctor, Arkansas, driving a tractor for some white man like my granddaddy, who would call me by my first name no matter how old I got. So I decided that the only tool I had was a belief in God and a little bit of sense up here. And if I strengthened both of them, just maybe I could get out of Proctor. And now I live a life that none of my grandparents could even fathom. And none of the folk in Proctor ever thought was possible. All because I had a whole lot of hope in God and some confidence in myself. And those same two things can be a game changer for you. And that ain't something I read in a book. That's a life I live.
I can't say it any better than that. As we started out, you got to have confidence in you. Because if not, you're twice defeated in the race of life. Listen, keep coming back, because we're going to keep bringing them. This is The Journey. I'm your host, Larry Robinson. For our guest, Reverend Pastor.
My man.
Dr. Christopher V. Davis. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your journey. Keep coming back. We are. Till the next time. Peace. Thank you to our partners, the Delta Boule and Tennessee Valley Authority. To hear more incredible stories like this, be sure to download the KUDZUKIAN app from the App Store or Google Play. Or check out the Journey Memphis podcast on all your major podcast providers. Also, check us out on the KUDZUKIAN Network.